Hello everyone, my name is Charlotte and I am from an organisation called VICTA. I'm here to talk to you today about the experiences that I went through when my daughter Scarlett was first diagnosed as visually impaired. I work in parent support and joining me today is Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Ring. I work for Look, which is a very small but national BI charity, and I am their parent support officer. And I will share my experience of when my now 14-year-old was diagnosed and what we went through.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Scarlett. So Scarlett is 12 now and would be in year 8. Scarlett has a condition called optic nerve hypoplasia. She was diagnosed at 4.5 months old. It was quite, looking back now, I feel like I did notice that there was something a bit different with her eyes. I don't know whether or not there was part of me in denial or the fact that people were reinforcing the feeling that, you know, children shouldn't always necessarily be tracking and be able to hold gazes and stuff at a young age, made it so I left it a little bit longer to go and get her checked out than I think I should have done. I did at the time feel quite terrible about that because I thought, well, how have I not been able to tell that she can't see, and to have left it for that amount of time to get her checked. The big indicator with Scarlett is that her pupils didn't dilate and contract. So, you know, saying that now, I do feel a bit silly because obviously her eyes weren't registering any light. I took her to the GP and we had an appointment at the eye hospital in Bolton to see the ophthalmologist there within the week. I think looking back now, she was my first child, and not knowing an awful lot about hospital waiting lists and things like that. I don't think I realised at the time that because we'd been seen so quickly that there was obviously something that they picked up on straight away. I don't think it was denial. I think it was just maybe a bit of naivety. Yeah. So we went to the ophthalmologist and it was pretty much yeah, we think she's got a sight condition. And we think it is optic nerve hypoplasia, which is a condition that affects the optic nerve and the wiring. He explained it like when a camera takes a picture and you load it up to the computer. They're both, the computer and the camera are working, but the wiring in between isn't sufficient enough to send the image across to the computer or something along those lines. And then it was confirmed by an MRI that her optic nerves were underdeveloped and there wasn't as many as there would normally appear in other people's eyes. So rather than carry on, I'm going to pass back over to Jane so she can tell us a little bit more about Chloe's condition.
So Chloe, we knew about, she's also profoundly deaf, and we knew about that first because deaf babies have newborn hearing screenings, and I think there are a few eye conditions that are screened for now by midwives, but it's kind of because eyes are actually not developing, are they? Babies don't actually see for a little bit, so don't feel bad as well. You think you have to remember that, Charlotte. So we knew about the deafness first, and my husband's deaf, so we had very early screening for that. They I think the next day they came round to Chloe to us at home. I was home, and they placed kind of headphones over her little ears, and there was no response, but everyone was like, it's fine, you know, this happens. But sure enough, very quickly we had a couple more visits and then went to hospital, and Chloe by this stage was only a couple of weeks old, and they said, yeah, she is profoundly deaf. There's no I think it was a really kind of, the decibel where she could hear was very, very high. So something like a loud lorry, that's all she could hear. So we were kind of processing that, and I was kind of coming to terms with that. because you can only really cope at one thing at a time. And we did go to hospital because she had a blocked tear duct, and even then the pediatrician was like, "Oh no, her icing fine, don't worry," because like I said, they don't focus at that stage. So, but it was quite soon. It was about 8 weeks where we had the GP check, and he knew about the ears, and we talked about that. And then he looked at her eyes, and he was like, "Oh, I think she's got a lazy eye, but it's okay. You're on the referral list anyway, because as soon as you have a baby that's profoundly deaf, you get on a list of other departments you need to visit in the hospital." So the ophthalmology was one of them. But as soon as he said it, I had this realization, and I remember frantically, suddenly, anyone that came to visit us, I was like, "Do you think Chloe's looking at that? Is she tracking that?" And I suddenly had an awareness that she didn't follow things, and she, she wasn't focused at all. And so, yeah, it took about another month or before we could actually go and have the appointment. And I don't know if you remember, Charlotte, but there is nothing quite like that moment where the consultant or the registrar tells you that your child cannot see very well. And I said, "Oh, is she blind?" And they said, "Well, yes, she's got very poor vision." So I was like, "But she can't be blind because she's deaf." That whole, you just can't compute, can you? And for a while, everything almost goes completely silent, because it's like everything implodes, and then you just have to pick up the pieces and work out what it means. And I don't know for you, but for me, it was a lot of visits to a lot of different hospitals. I think it was 4 hospitals from different areas of the country. We visited Moorfields because they're the specialist. Chloe had to have ERGs where they stick the kind of electrodes on the heads to measure reactions, and she had a flat line, so that she had one in Exeter where we're from, and then we went up to Moorfields and they did it again. But it's so hard when they're so little as well, because how do you really get them to respond when they're tiny? So she had hearing aids at that point that weren't really doing anything, but they told us to take them out, and then we had to force her eyes open. So there was a lot of stuff that happened that just felt really hard. And and even though my husband came with me, you just feel really isolated, I think, because it's such a lot to take on, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I remember it was quite difficult because tests like waving something in front of her eyes, and really random tests, but you kind of know how spontaneous children are. They're not, but then there was part of me thinking, why isn't she reaching for this big, shiny item that every other baby would grab a hold of? But I found the visual testing part of it really difficult, because you in a way, I think you convinced yourself, like the process that you went through of asking everyone and anyone, "Do you think she saw that?" I was like, "Yeah, she's definitely tracking that. Yeah, she's definitely tracking." And I can remember thinking, "Oh, is when they tell you," I don't know why, looking back now, I think, but then I was thinking, well, could she wear glasses? Would glasses fix it? What was quite difficult about Scarlett's sight condition is they put her down as severely sight impaired on the original certification, which was quite easy for us to get. I know that not all parents can obtain it as easy, but they said children with the condition between the age of 0 to 5, like the sight can improve and they can learn to use the sight that they've got. And I remember chatting to parents on mainly American forums, because there was quite a few groups set up for that condition in particular. And a lot of them have said, "Oh yeah, that they've got it, what they can see, they've got it, what they go to mainstream, they've got it." So I think I was clinging on to the fact that it was more of a kind of a partially sighted situation rather than Scarlett it has no light perception and no vision at all. So there was that stage of going, so how significant is this? Is this always going to be the case? And I know it, I'm talking to you as parents, I know it might feel quite difficult that you don't get that definitive answer, and you think it's something so important and so profound. How are you able to say to me, we are unsure of how this is going to pan out? And I think that is, it's got quite a lot of shock factor, really, because you think, well, haven't you developed so you can answer these questions? What do? Do you just say there's an impairment and leave people hanging when it's your little baby? And I think from the work that I do now, and my main kind of trauma related to that time, Scarlett's diagnosis, was the not knowing and not being able to be told. And I just, thinking about it now makes me quite upset. And then everyone else is asking and you can't give them the answers, and then they're just as shocked that you don't know. Well, have you asked? And you think, well, I've asked a million questions, I've been online for a million hours. Sometimes they just can't give you a straight answer, and it is very hard as a parent to deal with that. And I think that's one point I really wanted to make, that then sometimes the not knowing or not fully knowing how things are going to go is part of it, and it will always be difficult. There's never going to be an easy way for that to happen to you. So
yeah, dealing with the uncertainty is so hard, because Chloe's never really been given a definitive diagnosis either. So we know she's got her rods and cones she's got severe retinal dystrophy, her rods and cones don't work properly, but she has developed some level of vision, but she is severely sight impaired. But we were also told that it could deteriorate, and that could still happen. So she could end up losing the vision she's got that she's used to. But as time has gone on, it became less important to me. But for a while, I needed the answers. I needed to know. So we went to Great Ormond Street a lot. We saw geneticists connected with deafness and visual impairments. And my husband went through loads of testing. We had a lot of genetic appointments. And in the end, I realized that she was Chloe and Neil is Neil. And there's not, it's just how it is. And actually it kind of, in the end, there is some kind of calmness was going, well, we'll wait and see. But what we can do is support that really positive stuff you can do while they're young, kind of introducing early braille skills if they need to, helping them explore the world in a different way, kind of just adapting. But it takes a while, doesn't it? Because you have to get over the shock. Then hopefully you've got professionals that can come and kind of support you through it as well, because I think they're really, really key. And actually, in the midst of my despair, because it was very hard to understand how my little tiny baby was going to communicate, was going to find her way in the world, and she's doing incredibly well, but you don't know that. And there was a teacher of the visually impaired came, because what's good is, they do come right from the beginning as soon as there is a diagnosis. And it's hard because you're letting people into your home that you've never known. They're telling you things that blow your mind. But the one thing that he did do was he looked into Chloe's pram, and she was obviously looking around and he said there's something there. And for some reason at that point I kind of needed that. And then his colleague, who was from the habilitation service, would come in and bring, I don't know if you had a Be Active box. So it's like a little box, so you put your baby in it, but it's got shiny things and things that they can touch and feel, so it makes their world smaller. And for them to start exploring, because obviously when a child is visually impaired, it's like giving them that confidence, isn't it, to be able to go out and kind of learn about things. But yeah, just a few people that calmed me, but also told me there were things that I could do, and there were things, and that she would be okay. And yeah, that was really important. Yeah, to get help
Yeah.
get over that fear.
I think what I didn't do back then, or what I wasn't told about, which I always say to all parents now, is the ECLO based at the hospital.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we slipped through the net of getting referred to who it was, and I've since spoken to this lady. She's actually really nice and really helpful. So it was a shame that she wasn't our ECLO at the time. So we were just kind of given the diagnosis and then sent off into the world. And I think if I would have known what an ECLO was, then I would have said, can I go and speak to the ECLO? And I think right at the beginning, they would have been one of the key people that helped out. But we didn't have an ECLO, but the sensory impairment team in our local authority got in touch pretty quickly. And we had people around quite a lot. So that helped. I'd say my big turning point was getting involved with an organisation, and through meeting other parents with the organisation. So 18 months old Scarlett went to her first baby and toddler group, and it was the first time I'd ever seen other visually impaired children. I met people who wanted to help. I met people who knew the information, and it wasn't just going through posts on Google and trying to find it out for yourself. It was a local group, and I was quite lucky that it was available locally, because I know it's not always the situation for every parent and child. And I think from that point on, everything was a lot different. I had someone to just pick up the phone and call if I did feel lost or confused. It was nice to see children getting around and playing and having fun and engaging in the sessions. It was nice to see the play workers adapt the session, that it wasn't a visual place. They're not even huge differences. So sensory play is sensory play, isn't it? But the way that things can be adapted and changed slightly just to make it more engaging for the child. It's tiny little subtle things, but it does make the world of difference, especially for children like Scarlett with no vision, but they have like a sensory space there. Like I'd never been into a sensory room, and all the children were enjoying the dark space with the bright lights, and it was seeing things like that. I think to me, it made me realize how things could be adapted. I think that was put me on my first kind of life lesson of how throughout life everything can be achieved if it's adapted. And I think this learning and play and sensory stimulation and all this right at the beginning, although it's a massive learning experience for your child. I think as parents, it's like your intro into adapting a visual world to a little child. So, but yeah, I think parents and organisation was a big turning point for me. I know, Jane, you're also involved with quite a lot of organisations. And
yeah, we had portage ran step-by-step groups, and I think that really helped me, because the mistake I made, and you want to do it, is I joined the normal baby and toddler groups, and I even took Chloe to music with mummy, and she couldn't hear anything, and it was just ridiculous. I had to have a word with myself and go, there are some things that it's just, you're not going to get anything out of this, and Chloe's not. So finding groups where they did adapt to what your child needed was amazing. And that was I think it step by step was weekly, which was incredible. And it was portage workers in a local children's centre, and it wasn't just visually impaired children, but they adapted it for all the different people. We did going on a bear hunt, and so Chloe got to put her feet in like mud that was made of chocolate mousse, and all this it was just really lovely. And parents we got to know each other. We had a cup of tea, we had visitors, we did have some people from the kind of the hearing center would come and do the molds for hearing aids, all in a place where the children were relaxed, and all those things where actually people were making a huge difference, and we had a little community, was really, really good. And there were 2 or 3 babies around the same age who were visually impaired, which, as you know, can be quite unusual in different areas. And actually our local school, which has changed its remit now, there was West of England School in Exeter, and they had a kind of baby group. So again, it was monthly, but we'd go there and there'd be a few different kind of children and toddlers, and we do singing, and they had a sensory room and the same sort of thing. But just knowing there were things for our children really helped, really, really helped. And I got more relaxed about what Chloe could, because at that time she couldn't hear either. So we had loads of objects of reference. We had, you know, if we were going to a group, so step by step, they always had puppets. So I found like I had fun shopping, and I found a little miniature one so Chloe could feel it and know that's where she was going that day. And we learned how to sign on her as well. So it's that thing about not giving they are slightly more in control of what's happening, or they know what's happening. And for a bath, when I was giving her a bath, I'd give her a sponge so she'd know. And it was all that, you know, and that people came and taught me that. So I felt that, you know, that there were things I could do, and I learned not to go to those groups and where everybody's child was developing in a typical way, because that actually was just very painful. But also the not comparing and realizing that my child would get there. But we just have like that adaptation, and that's possible, because I think the comparisons really that can take you to a dark place, can't it? And you don't know, but you need the people that will support you and find your community as well. And we are lucky in Devon because we have more vision. And I'll never forget, when she was about 3, we kind of plucked up courage to go for the first time, and it was absolutely lovely. And yeah, so I know in Manchester you have a charity that does kind of young people get together and family, and that's the difference, isn't it? That we need those, and to get places, you know, the community from anywhere you can, and that feeling that you're not alone is, yeah, really important.
It is. It's really good, and there is, I believe, quite a strong sense of feeling of isolation when you're going through this. You know, I know lots of people are diagnosed as visually impaired, but it would be quite odd that your next door neighbour would have a visually impaired child. I know it runs hereditary in some families, but in my case, there was no other children with a visual impairment, so it was isolating. And I think that's the important part about, you know, seeking out these supportive communities. I think, I don't know what's the phrase, it takes a village.
Yeah,
and you really do. You know, I like seeing the visually impaired children that were the same age as Stella, but I also really enjoyed meeting the mums of slightly older children who just seemed like these fountains of knowledge, who just knew everything and anything. And it's the willingness as well that I found with the parents, the willingness to share and the willingness to want to help, because they've walked in, you know, in those shoes before, and they've been down that path, and they are passing on the knowledge that they wish they would have known at the time as well, and what their own lived experiences. So yeah, I think that's a big one for both me and Jane, that, isn't it? Yeah. Finding your tribe, I suppose. And
yeah, and it's, you're gonna have bad days, and I think just knowing that you can get through it, and that actually, you know, I had no idea you know, how Chloe's life would unfold, and she's got cochlear implants, and there's been some really tough bits, but she's just in a place now where I can see she's thriving and she's thinking about her future, and that is amazing. At 14, it's really lovely to see. Yeah, and that's it. just being able to reach out to the people that have been there before and ask advice and support. And I know you've got kind of peer mentors, haven't you? Young people that kind of are inspirational for your community, and we've got our mentors at Look, and actually parents love hearing from them because they can see that their child's future is going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's such a lovely thing to have, I think, that knowledge.
Yeah, I think there's lots of young people out there who are also keen to share their lives. They're also keen to talk about what their parents did really well, so that they can spread the knowledge, because we don't get everything right. You will, you know, whether or not your child's sighted or visually impaired, you still won't get everything right. And I think sometimes it's not always being about the perfect parent, but finding these perfect moments and savoring them instead of being kind of hung up on the hospital appointments, and they're not sleeping, or the fighting to get some intervention. I think it's really easy to focus on those really difficult parts, and you're completely warranted in doing so, because they do take up so much of your headspace. But I think it's really important to, I suppose it's like being mindful with your own child, isn't it? It's like a mind, and appreciating who they are. And I think a big turning point for me is at the time when Scarlett was diagnosed, there was a young lady who was on Good Morning TV, and she'd gone out to China. They'd raised, I think it was around £50,000 to have this private treatment done in China, where stem cells were injected into the child's brain, and as a result of that, the optic nerves grew, and this child had improved vision. So when I heard about that became my mission for a long time. And then the more I thought about it, paying all that money for this experimental treatment, that a lot of scientists would argue there's quite a lot of the placebo effect that happens with it. And it's just, you don't know whether or not in 10 years' time all these children will end up with brain tumours, because you've been messing, and doing something that isn't fully researched enough for us to kind of deliver over here. So I think that became my mission. I think I always picked little missions. This was going to be I think once that was no longer my mission, and I realized that Scarlett wasn't broken, and if I kept just thinking of different ways to fix her, I didn't see her as broken. I would never want her to believe herself that she was broken. I would never want my family or friends or anyone in the world to see it as I'm just trying to fix Scarlett, because she's perfect the way she is. And I get asked this question quite a lot, but I wouldn't magic wand Scarlett her vision. I wouldn't change that. I don't think it would completely change her as a person. And I think that she's thriving and she's happy and she gets so much out of life. And I think sometimes because she also has a learning disability that goes along with her sight condition. So Scarlett doesn't know she's blind. She doesn't know what blind means. She doesn't know she's different. And just as a result, she's just got this like really happy nature. It's so simple. She's just kind of really easily pleased as a person. And I think it's just because her world isn't small, because I spend a lot of time expanding it for her, but she's got kind of limited motivators. And that because of that, and because she's not got any kind of mental health issues relating to the fact that, she realizes she's different, she's probably a little bit too happy. I can hear her singing now. But yeah, sorry, what my original point was, once I accepted that was how she was supposed to be and that didn't need to be fixed, I think personally, as like Jane said before, the calmness that came along with that happened to me. And I think depending on it, there is no time frame on how long it should take you to reach that point, but I would say, in my personal opinion, that is a good point for you to get in order for you to move on emotionally.
and also all the pressure. I mean, that's the thing. It comes along, doesn't it, with all these. I mean, there was huge manuals that were given to me when Chloe was young. You know, kind of development if your child is deaf, development if your child is visually impaired, development if they're MSI, and you know all these targets we're meant to be, and they are good, but at some point you need to just stop and enjoy time with your child, and kind of just that joyful stuff, whatever it is. I remember just going up to Chloe's room, and we kind of changed her room to a like sensory room, and you know, kind of, or every birthday, Christmas was full of sensory toys, and but I would just go upstairs with her and turn the lights out and put things on and listen to music, and that I needed that time with her, because then you can pick up again, can't you? Then you can get onto the phone and make the next appointment if you need to, or you know, because there is a lot of stuff we have to do in the background, but don't ever forget to spend good quality time with your child, whatever makes them happy, and it will change. Chloe quite likes watching Miss Marple with me now, but yeah, it's really important to just kind of focus in, and they love it too, and because they know when we're in the background trying to fix things, don't they? I think.
Yeah.
So and actually Chloe's gone for a big circle now, she's older, where there has been, and I've been open about it, some really tricky times with her feeling like she didn't fit and that she was broken. But it's lovely because she's got to a point with a lot of support and help from mentors, and where she's okay now, and I think she'll probably end up writing about disability and kind of, you know, celebrating kind of people's difference, and you know, that's great. It's really positive. Just remember, it will be okay, and there'll be times where it feels really dark. Reach out to the people that are there to help, because actually in this world there's some amazing charities like VICTA and Look and Guide Dogs, and that can be there for you. Get the support you need, but don't forget to just kind of enjoy your child as well, and know that it will be okay, and that somehow you will find the strength, and just enjoy your children, because they are amazing.
I was going to say something similar, so I'll go with different. I think you'll probably get to a point as parents where when people say things like, oh, that's such a shame, and oh, that must be so, oh, I don't know how you do it, and look at your child and feel sorry for them, and look at you and feel sorry for you. And that will happen, unfortunately. And I don't think people mean to be patronizing or hurtful when they do it. I think it's just a natural response, maybe mixed in with a little bit of ignorance. And I think as parents, it is okay to correct people. I think you should say, you know, we don't really want pity. Empathy might be quite nice. Empathy is always a lovely thing, but you know, don't feel sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for my child. We're not, you know, we're not something to be pitied. So yes, parents, I feel like you will come across that. It's difficult. You get it down to a bit of a fine art, don't you, Jane, where you know how to respond, and you've got your pre-written scripts in your head, and then you think that you will not get emotionally affected by it, and then you'll have a really rubbish day, and somebody will like stop and be, oh, it's such a shame in the street, and then you'll just be back to square one with where it really makes you angry. It's all right to feel angry. It's okay to correct people. I think, you know, it's a good thing. It'd probably be helpful to that person. They probably didn't realize it or looked at it from your perspective. But it will happen, and it will sometimes feel bad, but it won't always feel bad, and it will be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for joining me today, Jane.
Oh, it's been really good to talk about it.